Hey, what's up guys? Kool-Aid here. Today we're going to be talking about the Trap M1, the new Empire-specific sniper rifle for the Terran Republic. Now, I don't want to call this an official review. This is going to be more of my thoughts, my impressions. I don't really want to call it a first impressions video either because I do have a couple hundred kills with this gun already, so I have a pretty good idea of how it works. I've also done some testing on some stuff, but we do not have certain numbers that I can give you, like the exact recoil pattern. I can't find that anywhere. We don't actually have the rate of fire. We have a chamber time, but that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, especially since the rate of fire is different on all three fire modes. So it's not really a complete review, more or less just my thoughts and my impressions after a couple hundred kills. So we'll start with the stats that we do have, and the Trap M1 is going to do 184 damage out to 15 meters. That means it's going to be a 3-hit kill headshot to any class, and a 6-hit kill body shot to any class not using nanoweave armor, except for an infiltrator where it will actually only be a 5-hit kill body shot. Now it will reach its minimum damage of 167 at 85 meters, where it's still going to be a 3-hit kill headshot and a 6-hit kill body shot to any class, again not using nanoweave armor, so it retains its damage very well. Normally I'd talk about rate of fire next, give you guys some numbers, but since we don't have those numbers, as Sony doesn't like to use rate of fire for their semi-automatic sniper rifles for whatever reason, I will tell you guys that if you're comparing single fire and 2-round burst, you can dump the mag with both at pretty much the exact same time. I don't really notice a difference, and I did do some testing on this. However, the 2-round burst does still have that advantage if you're picking your shots more carefully, because you're obviously going to be hitting with 2 rounds instead of 1, so it does definitely come into play. Now with the 3-round burst, you will be able to dump the mag faster, and you will have a faster time to kill, but that does come with some penalty that we'll talk about more in a minute. This does have a muzzle velocity of 600 meters per second, which is faster than the other semi-automatic sniper rifles, and this is one of my main draws to this weapon, is you can suppress it without really feeling too much of a penalty at all. It has a short reload of 2.31 seconds and a long reload of 3.25 seconds, which is not great, but it is manageable. It's not terrible. It does have 18 rounds per magazine with an ammo pool of 126, and the 18-round magazine is probably one of the biggest complaints I have seen so far. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think it meshes really well with the weapon design. What I mean by that is you're going to want to switch up fire modes based on the range or the situation you're in. And if you're dedicated to using just one fire mode on this weapon, you're going to want to put yourself in the best effective range for that fire mode. To go into this a little bit further, I found 3-round burst being incredibly effective within 30 meters and still usable out to 40 or 50 meters, but at that point you're going to be wasting a little bit more ammo, and that's where that whole magazine size meshing with the weapon comes into play. At that 40 to 50 meter ranges out to about 75 meters, I found the 2-round burst incredibly effective, and that's what I would want to be using over those ranges. Now, as for the single fire aspect of the weapon, I tried multiple times to use this, and it's just not very effective. The only time that you might want to switch to it is if you happen to have a target at extremely long ranges. I'm talking about 100 meters plus, and you don't want to waste extra bullets that you might by using 2-round or 3-round burst. Then you can switch to it, but for the most part, because of the damage model on this weapon, because of the low damage and the way it works, your target's probably just going to get behind cover or somehow get away. You'd be much better off using one of the semi-auto sniper rifles, one of the other semi-auto sniper rifles, or a bolt action if your prerogative is long-range sniping. This weapon is just not designed for that. As for accuracy, due to its lower damage, higher rate of fire model, it is going to be more accurate per shot than the other semi-automatic rifles. Now, I'm not going to go over all these numbers for you, but the aim down sight cone of fire while crouching and moving is 0.17, and the aim down sight while standing and moving is 0.32, with an aim down sight bloom per shot of 0.07 and a hip fire bloom of 0.14. The overall hip fire on this weapon is not great, but it's not terrible either due to that 3-round burst option. I found myself getting multiple hip fire kills with some relative ease, and the trusty shot knife option is there as well. Because of that 3-round burst, you put 3 rounds into somebody and knife them. It's very, very effective on this weapon. As far as recoil, this is the other stat that we don't seem to have complete access to yet. Nobody has yet pulled it from the game files and put it on the data sheets that I normally use for my weapon reviews, or at least not that I have seen so far. But I did do some testing for you guys, and as you can see on all three fire modes, it's going to have massive vertical recoil with some deviation to the right. And I'll also show you guys what it looks like when trying to compensate for this recoil by yanking down on the mouse and yanking slightly to the left. Now, one thing that you might find interesting is that while doing these mag dumps, and that's basically just pulling the trigger as fast as possible, I actually got better groupings with the higher rate of fire, with the higher burst mode on. With the 3-round burst, you'll see a very nice grouping to the chest. With the 2-round burst, you'll see a pretty good grouping. And with the single burst, it was just a lot harder to control. But keep in mind, this is just a mag dump, and this type of firing method will only be used in certain close quarters combat situations. There is another factor here that we've yet to talk about, and that's what we'll focus on now. And that factor is the bullet deviation within the fire modes themselves. So if you're firing it on single fire while taking your time in between shots, your bullets will hit wherever you have your crosshairs pointed. If you're firing in 2 or 3-round burst, this is obviously only going to be true about the first bullet, or else you'd have an extremely overpowered weapon. So from close range, firing on 2-round bursts, you can see that the second bullet will hit very close to the first bullet, just landing slightly above it. The further you get away from your target, the more pronounced that spread will be. Now, this is pretty standard stuff, and that's what's to be expected of this weapon, but the reason I'm showing you guys this is because when firing on 3-round burst, there's actually a bigger deviation within the first and second round. So even though while doing a mag dump, it looked easier to get tighter groupings in close quarters while on 3-round burst, that extra bullet deviation will just be much harder or even impossible to compensate for at longer ranges. Typically at longer ranges in 3-round burst, if you're aiming for the chest, you almost always miss with the third bullet. And because of the spread on 3-round burst, your second bullet has a much higher chance to miss as well. This is exactly why you need to switch up firing modes based on the range and situation. Not only will you be putting more shots on target, but also as a direct effect of that, you'll be wasting less ammo in the process. And just out of curiosity, I wanted to see at what distance I could actually land all 3 shots from a 3-round burst to head of a target, and it looks like out to about 20 meters with some recoil management, you can actually get all 3 shots to get a headshot with one pull the trigger, which will drop somebody instantly. Now, it's not very plausible that that's going to happen. Even on a still target, it does take a little bit of luck, but the possibility is there. And I even tested this on 2-round burst, and it looks like out to 70 meters, you can actually land both shots from a 2-round burst at somebody's head. So it's just something I was a little bit curious about. Nothing that really changes how you're going to use this weapon or anything like that, but the possibility is there. As far as attachments go for the rail, you have the dark light, the laser, and the grip. You're going to want to put the grip on this thing and forget about the other 2 options. In fact, I feel so strongly about this that when I showed you my recoil patterns earlier on, I actually did have the grip equipped during that, and that was not a mistake. That's because I honestly feel that you should always be running the grip on this weapon. If you were to take it off, you would get much more horizontal recoil or pull to the right. As far as the barrel attachments, you have one option, which is the suppressor, and I actually really like using the suppressor on this weapon, not only because it's a shorter to medium range type weapon, but also because it's going to offer more muzzle velocity than some of the other rifles out there, so you're not going to feel the penalty of the suppressor as much. For optics, you have anywhere from iron sights up to a 6x, and I used a lot of different variations of optics as well as combining them with different fire modes, and the only optics that I found that I really didn't like with this weapon were the 6x. I think it's just too much zoom for this weapon, and if you're talking in terms of sniper rifles, this is more of a short to medium range sniper rifle. In fact, it's not really a sniper rifle in anything other than name. It acts a lot more like maybe a scout rifle. If I actually could come up with my own classification of weapons, I would call this a battle rifle. That's how I think of this weapon. And the fact that you can use something like this on an infiltrator, I think is really cool, and just, you know, allows for a new style of infiltrator gameplay. In fact, I'm a little bit jealous that I don't have this on my main faction, so I'm not going to get to use it as much as I'd like. And please guys, don't start with the which faction got the best Empire specific weapon debate. Try to leave that out of the comment sections. I'd really appreciate that in these weapon reviews. I don't want to make these reviews about that at all. But anyways, guys, that's pretty much all I have. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later.